John James Sykes was born on July 29, 1959 in Reading, Berkshire. His early years carried an air of unpredictability. Moving with his family to Spain for 3 years, his father and uncle owned a discotheque there, exposing young John to a nightlife culture that hummed with the pulse of music, though it would be years before he found his way into the scene himself. When the Sykes family returned to Reading, John's focus shifted back to an ordinary British adolescence, until the guitar called to him at age 14. It wasn't a grand moment of revelation, but something quieter, almost incidental. His uncle handed him a guitar and showed him a few of Eric Clapton's licks. Those simple notes lit a fire. For the next 2 years, John worked on blues songs with an old nylon string guitar, the type of instrument that demanded focus and determination to wrest any real music out of it. But life had its distractions. A teenage relationship pulled him away from the instrument for a year and a half, a period of dormancy for his budding passion. Moving to Blackpool gave him the reset he needed, and soon he was back at it, this time with renewed intensity. Blackpool brought more than just focus, it brought connections. Sykes' friend, bassist Mervyn Goldsworthy, introduced him to the local band scene, eventually pulling him into a group called Street Fighter. This wasn't a career-defining band by any means, but it was a start, a foundation on which Sykes could build his skills and stage presence. From here, his trajectory would shift upward, albeit unevenly, as he transitioned to professional music. His break came in 1980 when John Sykes joined the Tigers of Pan Tang, a group riding the crest of the new wave of British heavy metal movement. For Sykes, it was an entry point into a scene that demanded raw talent and relentless energy, and he delivered both in spades. His work on the Tigers' album Spellbound and Crazy Nights, both released in 1981, immediately set him apart from the pack. Sykes' playing was a masterclass in controlled aggression, blistering alternate picking, and solos that didn't just shred, but sang with a sense of purpose. He had a melodic sensibility that elevated the band's sound, combining technical mastery with an almost lyrical quality that made his guitar work memorable long after the final notes faded. At the heart of Sykes' sound was his signature 1978 Gibson Les Paul Custom, a guitar that became an extension of his personality. Fitted with chrome hardware and a Dirty Fingers pickup in the bridge, the Les Paul gave Sykes the ability to produce a biting, searing tone while still delivering rich, warm sustain. His choice of Ernie Ball String's 10-gauge and Dunlop Tortex picks complemented his aggressive playing style. Whether he was unleashing rapid-fire alternate picking, pinching out harmonics with surgical precision, or coaxing soulful bends out of the strings, Sykes' hands turned the Les Paul into a weapon and a storyteller. He could shred the hell out of a pentatonic, but equally go more modal if the song asked for it. But gear alone doesn't define a guitarist. Technique does. Another standout in his Tashik was his vibrato. He had one of the most sophisticated sounding vibratos out of most guitarists in rock. He was also an early adopter of tapping, using it sparingly to add texture rather than as a flashy gimmick. Combined with his precise alternate picking and double note phrasing, his technique was as distinctive as it was versatile. Tracks like Hellbound from Spellbound showcased his ability to blend sheer speed with melodic phrasing, while Love Don't Stay demonstrated his knack for creating mood and atmosphere even in heavier composition. Yet despite his growing reputation, the Tigers of Pan Tang were plagued by internal strife. Sykes and vocalist John Deverell often clashed with the rest of the band, frustrated by what Sykes described as a lack of style and dedication. To him, it wasn't enough to play well. A band needed vision, focus, and hunger to rise above the crowd, and Sykes quickly outgrew the Tigers, seeing their limitations as obstacles to his own ambitions. By early 1982, he'd had enough. In a move that shocked his bandmates and left them scrambling, Sykes quit the group just 2 days before a scheduled tour of France. It was a bold, bridge-burning decision, but it freed him to pursue something more substantial. Before closing the Tigers chapter entirely, he left traces of his work on their fourth album, The Cage. Though recorded after his departure, the album bore Sykes' fingerprints on 2 tracks, a symbolic reminder that he had already outpaced the band even as they tried to move forward without him. From there, Sykes entered a period of transition, testing the waters with various projects. He auditioned for Ozzy Osbourne's band, a slot that could have been a game changer, but the opportunity didn't materialize. He also joined John Sloman's Badlands, a short-lived group that secured a deal with EMI but fizzled out after only a few shows. These setbacks could have derailed a lesser guitarist, but Sykes' sheer talent and determination made it clear that his big break was just around the corner. That break came through an unexpected connection. Sykes was still under contract with MCA Records from his time with the Tigers, owing them a single before he could be fully released. It was this obligation that brought him into contact with producer Chris Tsangarides, who facilitated an introduction to Phil Lynott, the magnetic frontman of Thin Lizzy. Sykes and Phil clicked immediately, their shared love of melody and high-octane rock creating an instant bond. Together, they co-wrote and recorded the single Please Don't Leave Me in 1982, a track that showcased Sykes' growing maturity as both a player and songwriter. Phil saw the fire and potential in Sykes, and as Thin Lizzy prepared for its next chapter, he invited Sykes to join. By September 1982, Sykes was officially part of the band, stepping into an arena where creativity and chaos reigned in equal measure. Thin Lizzy was at a crossroads. Their glory days of the 70s were beginning to feel like distant memories, and years of relentless touring, internal tensions, and personal struggles had taken their toll. But Sykes brought a jolt of energy that revitalized the group. His playing added a heavier, sharper edge to their sound, steering the band into the metal-tinged direction of their swan song, Thunder and Lightning. With Thin Lizzy, Sykes found himself on the biggest stage of his career thus far. It was a whirlwind of late-night sessions, high-pressure tours, and the ever-present specter of the band's history. Yet instead of being chewed up by the chaos, Sykes thrived, his guitar work serving as both an anchor and a catalyst for the band's final burst of creativity. It was a crucible that would prepare him for even greater heights, solidifying his reputation as one of the most exciting guitarists of his generation. The band's final studio album, Thunder and Lightning, in 1983, bore the unmistakable mark of Sykes' influence. His fast alternate picking and searing vibrato lit up tracks like Cold Sweat, a song he co-wrote with Phil. It wasn't just a technical display, it was raw energy, distilled into a 3-minute punch of heavy metal swagger. Sykes' guitar work didn't just complement the band, it dragged them into the metallic forefront, revitalizing Thin Lizzy's sound with a contemporary edge that many thought they'd lost. Critics and fans alike took notice, praising his ability to blend fiery intensity with melodic sophistication. The Thunder and Lightning tour, billed as the band's farewell, pushed everyone to their limits. The stakes were high. This was Thin Lizzy's swan song, and Sykes was determined to make every moment count. While the shows were packed with nostalgia for longtime fans, the energy was anything but retro. Sykes tore through the set list with a ferocity that belied the band's uncertain future. He also joined Lynott for a European solo tour during this period, deepening their bond both on and off stage. As the tour wound its way to a close, Thin Lizzy played their final UK concert at the Reading Festival in August 1983, followed by their official last show at the Monsters of Rock Festival in Nuremberg that September. For Sykes, it was a bittersweet ending. He had poured himself into the band, and while he was ready for what came next, the camaraderie and creative partnership with Phil had left a lasting impression. Phil also seemed reluctant to let go entirely, hinting at the possibility of future collaborations. But for now, the curtain had fallen on Thin Lizzy. What followed was a moment of hesitation for Sykes. He had offers, most notably an invitation to join Grand Slam, Phil's post-Lizzy project, but something about the prospect didn't sit right. While he admired Phil deeply, Sykes was eager to carve his own path. As fate would have it, another opportunity came knocking, one that would define the next chapter of his career. Whitesnake was on the rise, thanks to David Coverdale's vision of transforming the band from a bluesy British rock outfit into a global juggernaut. When Coverdale reached out to Sykes, it wasn't the first time the two had crossed paths. Thin Lizzy and Whitesnake had shared festival stages, and Sykes' reputation as a guitarist with both firepower and finesse hadn't gone unnoticed. He was no ordinary player. His aggressive yet melodic style had made him stand out even among the era's heavyweight. At first, Sykes hesitated. His loyalty to Phil Lynott and Thin Lizzy ran deep, and stepping away from that chapter so soon felt like abandoning unfinished business. He was still processing the band's end, still tethered emotionally to the music and memories they'd created together. But Phil, always a mentor and friend, encouraged him to take the opportunity. Coverdale's persistence, combined with a financial offer too good to ignore, sealed the deal. After receiving Phil's blessing and negotiating terms that gave him creative input, Sykes agreed to join. Sykes' arrival marked a turning point for Whitesnake. His first assignment came with an urgency that demanded immediate results. The band's latest album at the time, Slide It In, which was released in 1984, had already been released in Europe, but it wasn't hitting hard enough to make a splash in the competitive U.S. market. The record needed more edge, something Sykes had in spades. He was flown to Munich, where the task at hand was clear: overhaul the guitar tracks and inject the kind of vitality that would resonate with American audiences. Sykes didn't just deliver, he transformed the album. Layering in his signature tone, his riffs and solos gave Slide It In the muscle it needed, especially on tracks like Slow and Easy and Love Ain't No Stranger. The album's retooled version was a hit, selling over 500,000 copies in the US and earning the band newfound credibility as serious contenders on the global stage. The success of Slide It In was followed by an extensive world tour. The grind of the road tested everyone's stamina, but for Sykes, it was a proving ground. His stage presence was magnetic, an electrifying blend of raw energy and technical precision. Audiences were mesmerized by his ability to command attention without overshadowing the band. It was a fine line to walk, but Sykes navigated it effortlessly. Critics and fans alike compared him to guitar gods like Jimmy Page and Ritchie Blackmore, both of whom Sykes had idolized growing up. These were not empty comparisons. Sykes' playing possessed the same blend of virtuosity and emotive power, qualities that elevated Whitesnake's live performances to an entirely new level. The tour reached its zenith at the 1985 Rock in Rio Festival, where Whitesnake performed to an audience of over 200,000. Sharing the bill with some of the biggest names in music, the band delivered a pair of electrifying sets that cemented their status as a rising force in hard rock. Sykes' guitar work was a standout element, his solos cutting through the humid Brazilian air like a knife. It was a moment of triumph, a high point that seemed to foreshadow even greater things to come. Behind the scenes, however, tensions were brewing. David Coverdale was a visionary and a perfectionist, but his exacting standards often clashed with Sykes' more direct, no-nonsense approach. Despite their differences, the two began writing what would become Whitesnake's self-titled 1987 album, often referred to simply as the 1987 album. Their creative chemistry was undeniable. In a matter of weeks, Sykes and Coverdale co-wrote the majority of the record, crafting songs that would define the band's sound for years to come. Still of the Night, with its Zeppelin-esque grandeur, and Is This Love, a power ballad that dripped with radio-friendly charm, were products of this intense collaboration. Sykes' guitar work pushed the band into more polished, mainstream territory, while Coverdale's soaring vocals gave the songs their emotional weight. The recording sessions at Little Mountain Sound Studios in Vancouver were grueling. Coverdale's perfectionism meant long hours of tweaking and reworking parts, while Sykes' relentless drive to deliver flawless guitar solos often clashed with the singer's need for control. The pressure mounted as deadlines loomed, and the cracks in their relationship widened. Sykes' straightforward demeanor, he was never one to sugarcoat his opinions, often rubbed Coverdale the wrong way, while Coverdale's ego and desire to micromanage created an environment rife with tension. By the time the album was nearing completion, their partnership had become untenable. The breaking point came suddenly and decisively. Coverdale, citing the need for a fresh start, made the shocking decision to fire the entire band, including Sykes, before the album was even released. For Sykes, it was a betrayal of the highest order. He had poured his heart and soul into the album, spending countless hours crafting the intricate solos and arrangements that would become its signature. His work was finished, but the sting of being cast aside was deep and personal. He later recounted confronting Coverdale at the studio, only for the singer to evade him entirely, fleeing the confrontation like a man avoiding his own reflection. When Whitesnake 1987 was finally released, it was an unqualified success. The album sold over 8 million copies in the US alone, powered by hits like Here I Go Again and Still of the Night. It catapulted Whitesnake to superstardom, transforming them into one of the biggest bands of the decade. But for Sykes, the triumph was bittersweet. He had been instrumental in shaping the album's sound, yet he wasn't there to share in the glory. Watching the band he had helped elevate bask in the spotlight without him was a painful reminder of how quickly things could change in the music business. Determined to channel his creative energy and frustration into something new, John Sykes set out to form a band that would be entirely his own. By 1988, he had assembled a lineup that included bassist Tony Franklin, a virtuoso known for his fretless playing, and drummer Carmine Appice, a hard-hitting veteran with a reputation as one of rock's most powerful percussionists. Together, they became Blue Murder, a band that Sykes envisioned as a fresh start and the definitive statement of his musical identity. The debut album, Blue Murder, released in 1989, was a thunderous proclamation of what John Sykes could achieve when given free rein. This wasn't just another hard rock record, it was a statement of intent, the work of an artist stepping out from the shadows of past collaborations to claim the spotlight as his own. With legendary producer Bob Rock at the helm, Sykes poured everything he had into the album, crafting a sound that was both expansive and deeply personal. The record fused his blistering, technically brilliant guitar work with a newfound focus on melodic songwriting, a combination that elevated it beyond the standard fare of the era. Sykes' unexpectedly powerful vocals added another layer of depth, surprising even some of his longtime fans. Where others might have faltered stepping into the dual role of guitarist and frontman, Sykes rose to the occasion, proving that his talents extended far beyond the fretboard. The album's tracks showcased an impressive range of styles and moods, making it clear that Blue Murder was no ordinary band. Valley of the Kings, a sprawling epic drenched in Eastern-inspired scales and towering guitar riffs, painted a picture of grandeur and ambition. The song wasn't just a showcase of technical prowess, but also a testament to Sykes' ability to write music that felt cinematic in scope. On the other end of the spectrum was Jelly Roll, a bluesy, groove-heavy track that leaned into Sykes' roots as a player who could make a guitar sing with emotion as easily as he could shred. The track's infectious hooks and soulful swagger showed a more playful side to the album, balancing the heavier moments with a sense of ease. Critics were quick to praise Blue Murder for its sophistication. The production was rich and polished, with Bob Rock bringing his signature ability to make each instrument shine without losing the cohesion of the whole. Sykes' guitar tone was razor-sharp, cutting through the mix like a blade, while the rhythm section, anchored by Tony Franklin's fretless bass and Carmine Appice's thunderous drumming, provided a solid yet dynamic foundation. Many noted that Sykes had accomplished something rare. He had emerged from the shadows of his high-profile past to establish himself as a force to be reckoned with in his own right. This wasn't just a guitarist's album, it was a fully realized artistic vision. Despite its artistic merits and the undeniable talent behind it, Blue Murder struggled to gain the traction Sykes had hoped for. The album peaked at number 69 on the Billboard 200 and eventually sold around 500,000 copies, a respectable showing, but far short of the breakout success it deserved. Part of the problem lay with the band's label, Geffen Records, which seemed oddly hesitant to fully back the project. Sykes later speculated that Geffen had their own agenda, one that didn't necessarily include pushing Blue Murder to the forefront. He believed the label was still clinging to the idea of reuniting him with David Coverdale, a prospect they likely viewed as a more lucrative, winning formula. This left Blue Murder in an awkward position, critically acclaimed, but lacking the full promotional support needed to break through in a crowded market. For Sykes, the situation was deeply frustrating. He had poured his heart and soul into creating something that stood apart, only to watch it be sidelined by what he saw as corporate indecision and short-sightedness. Geffen's lukewarm commitment left him feeling as though the band hadn't been given a fair shot to prove themselves on a larger scale. Still, Blue Murder remains a testament to Sykes' artistry, a bold, unapologetic statement from a musician who refused to let industry politics define his career. It may not have reached the commercial heights he'd envisioned, but the album's enduring reputation speaks to its quality and the sheer force of will that went into its creation. Blue Murder embarked on a series of tours, showcasing their explosive sound to audiences worldwide. Among the highlights was a successful run in Japan, where the band was met with enthusiasm bordering on reverence. Japanese fans, known for their deep appreciation of virtuosity and technical skill, latched onto Sykes' fiery guitar work and the band's dynamic stage presence. It was a validation of their artistry, if not the commercial breakthrough they had hoped for. However, beneath the surface, the band was already showing signs of strain. The relentless pressures of touring, combined with the disappointment of underwhelming sales in other markets, began to expose cracks in the foundation. Conflicting personalities within the group only added fuel to the fire. As the band prepared to work on their second album, Nothing But Trouble, in 1993, those tensions reached a boiling point. Both bassist Tony Franklin and drummer Carmine Appice departed, leaving Sykes to rebuild the lineup. Marco Mendoza, a bassist with a flair for soulful, groove-laden playing, and Tommy Osteen, a hard-hitting drummer, stepped in to fill the void. While the new lineup brought a fresh energy to the studio, the chemistry of the original trio was difficult to replicate. The album itself maintained the high standards of musicianship that fans had come to expect from Sykes, with blistering solos and polished arrangements that underscored his relentless dedication to his craft. Tracks like We All Fall Down and She Knows showcased his ability to blend melodic hooks with muscular riffs, but the album struggled to make an impact. It failed to chart, and Geffen Records, having already shown lukewarm support for the band, ultimately dropped them. For Sykes, the dissolution of Blue Murder was a bitter pill to swallow. He had poured years of his life into the project only to see it unravel under the weight of industry politics and unmet expectations. The band's quiet disbandment marked the end of a chapter, but it was far from the end of Sykes' story. Even as Blue Murder faded, Sykes was determined to press forward. By 1995, he had turned his focus to a solo career, releasing Out of My Tree. The album marked the beginning of a fruitful partnership with the Japanese branch of Mercury Records, a relationship that would prove to be a lifeline during a time when much of the Western rock scene had shifted its focus to grunge and alternative. Japan, however, remained a haven for melodic hard rock, and Sykes found an audience there that appreciated his commitment to the genre. The album was a showcase for his versatility, blending the heavy riffs and intricate solos that had become his signature with a more personal, introspective approach to songwriting. Over the next few years, Sykes continued to explore different facets of his artistry. Loveland, released in 1997, leaned into ballads and softer material, highlighting his ability to craft emotionally resonant songs that stood apart from his harder-edged work. His companion album, 20th Century, swung in the opposite direction, offering a heavier, more aggressive sound that channeled the raw power of his earlier work while pushing into new sonic territory. Together, the albums demonstrated a creative restlessness and a refusal to be pigeonholed. While his solo efforts didn't achieve the commercial heights of his work with Thin Lizzy or Whitesnake, they allowed Sykes to work on his own terms. Free from the constraints of a band dynamic, he embraced the freedom to experiment, refine his sound, and connect with an audience that valued his authenticity. His reputation as a consummate professional grew, bolstered by consistently strong performances and a loyal fan base, particularly in Japan, where his albums were warmly received and his tours well attended. Amid his solo ventures, Sykes also reconnected with his past. In 1994, he reunited with former Thin Lizzy bandmates Scott Gorham, Brian Downey, and Darren Wharton to form a reimagined version of the band. Presented as a tribute to Phil Lynott's legacy, this incarnation of Thin Lizzy wasn't about nostalgia. It was about keeping Lynott's music alive for new generations. Sykes took a leadership role, ensuring the performances honored the band's storied history while injecting them with a renewed sense of energy. The reformed Thin Lizzy toured extensively, playing to audiences eager to relive the magic of Lynette's songs. Their live album, One Night Only, released in 2000, captured the spirit of these performances, showcasing the enduring power of tracks like The Boys Are Back in Town and Jailbreak. Though the band didn't record new material, their shows were well received, and Sykes' guitar work and vocals brought a fresh intensity to the classic catalog. For Sykes, it was a way to honor Lynette while continuing to evolve as a musician, a balancing act that defined much of his career. Even as the reformed Thin Lizzy thrived on stage, Sykes began to feel the pull back to his solo career. By 2009, he announced his departure from the band, stating that it was time to focus on his own music. He spent the next several years working on various projects, though his output became sporadic. He collaborated with high-profile musicians like drummer Mike Portnoy and bassist Billy Sheehan on a project tentatively titled Bad Apple, but scheduling conflicts ultimately derailed the effort. Sykes was later replaced by Richie Kotzen, and the group rebranded as the Winery Dogs. Throughout the 2010s, Sykes continued to tease new solo material, occasionally releasing snippets and demos that hinted at an album tentatively titled Psyops. Fans waited eagerly, but delays and a failed partnership with Golden Robot Records meant that the project remained elusive. In 2021, however, Sykes surprised his audience by releasing 2 new tracks, Dawning of a Brand New Day and Out Alive, his first new music in over 2 decades. These songs offered glimpses of his enduring creativity and skill, though they were bittersweet reminders of how long fans had been left waiting. In his personal life, Sykes was private and unassuming, devoted to his 3 sons, James, John Jr., and Sean, and to the music that had defined his life. He often described himself as a blues player that plays rock, a description that perfectly encapsulated his ability to balance technical mastery with soul and emotion. By the time he passed away on January 20th, 2025, after a battle with cancer, John Sykes had cemented his legacy as one of rock's most gifted and influential guitarists. His journey, from the kid in Reading learning Clapton licks on a nylon string guitar to a global rock icon, was marked by triumph, heartbreak, and an unwavering commitment to his craft. His music lives on, a testament to a life spent in the pursuit of something greater than himself. John's loss was a sad one because we really didn't see it coming. His level of talent was off the charts, both as a player and as a singer. He did more for rock than he got credit for, and I hope that we all can go explore his work to really understand just how much of a musical beast John really was. May John rest in peace.